Suze Orman just told millions of people the truth about retirement. And she's right. She's also about to leave half of them still exposed. Stick with me for the next few minutes because I want to show you the difference between preparing for an early retirement and building one that can't be taken away from you, no matter when it starts. Here's what Orman actually said, and I want to be fair about it up front, because she's not wrong. She said planning to work until 65 is risky. The EBRI 2026 Retirement Confidence Survey backs her up on that. Most workers plan to retire at 65. The median worker actually retires at 62, 3 years earlier than planned. And that's not a small group. That's half of all American workers. Craig Copeland, who directs wealth benefits research at EBRI, put it plainly. It happens to 1 in 2 people. But most people think they'll be the one who gets to work longer. That's not a fringe statistic. That's a coin flip on your own retirement date. And most of us are betting we won't lose that flip. So when Suze Orman says pay off your mortgage before you retire and get aggressive with catch-up contributions in your 50s, that is solid advice. I would tell clients the same thing. But here's the problem with stopping there. She's coaching you on how to survive an earlier retirement. In a few minutes, I'm going to show you why that's the wrong goal to aim at completely and what one couple did instead when their retirement date got moved up 2 years without their permission. Let's talk numbers for a second, because Suze Orman's advice comes with real mechanics behind it. In 2026, if you are 50 or older, you can put $32,500 into a 401k. If you're 60 to 63, that jumps to $35,750. IRA catch-up contributions go up to $8,600. Those are good moves, and I want you to make them. But notice what every one of them has in common. They're all built around surviving the possibility that your last paycheck arrives earlier than planned. None of them answer the question that actually determines whether you sleep well at night, which is, what does your money produce on its own, regardless of when your employer decides your career is over? That is the real shift I want you to make today. Stop asking, when will I retire? That's a question about somebody else's decision, your employer's. Start asking, what does my money produce? That is a question about your decisions, your Social Security claiming strategy, your withdrawal sequencing, your tax exposure, the Roth conversion windows you use or don't use in your final working years. And if you're not yet 65, how would you bridge the gap to Medicare if the paycheck stopped tomorrow? Notice something else about Orman's framing too. It assumes the risk only shows up at the exact moment you planned to retire. But the couple I want to tell you about didn't get pushed out at 65, they got pushed out at 61, which is exactly the kind of scenario that makes prepare for an earlier retirement advice fall short. You don't usually get to pick your early date, so the plan has to work at any date. Let me tell you about a couple I worked with. I'll call them Gary and Diane. Gary spent 28 years in corporate finance, good salary, good saver, the kind of guy who never missed a contribution. He and Diane had a plan. Gary would work until 66 and max out his final 3 years of contributions before stepping away. At 61, Gary's company restructured. His division was eliminated. Just like that, the plan he and Diane had built their timeline around was gone, 2 years ahead of schedule, with no warning and no say in the matter. Gary panicked for about 3 weeks. That's normal. Losing a job you plan to keep for 5 more years shakes anyone, no matter how prepared you think you are. Then he and Diane sat down together and looked at their actual financial picture, not the plan they'd assumed they'd get to follow. Here's what they found. A paid-off house, a $80,000 investment portfolio, generating roughly $2,700 a month in dividend income, and a Social Security benefit Gary had not claimed yet, growing at 8% a year for every additional year he waited to file. The forced retirement didn't destroy their plan. It revealed what they'd already built. They had enough. And the timing of Gary's last paycheck didn't change their life, or Diane's. That's not luck. That's a decade of intentional building done together, years before either of them knew the date would move. Diane told me later that the hardest part wasn't the money. It was the fear in that first week that the money might not be there. Having the answer already in hand is what turned 3 weeks of panic into a plan they could actually stand on. If this is the kind of planning you want, the kind that holds up no matter what your employer decides, or what your health does, or what happens in Washington on any given Tuesday, hit subscribe now. Every week, I break down one retirement decision that actually moves the needle for couples in your situation. Here's what building income above the floor looks like in real numbers. Say a couple has $500,000 in a dividend-focused portfolio, generating a modest 5% yield. That's $25,000 a year, or a little over $2,000 a month, before Social Security and before any other income source. Add the average Social Security check, around $2,100 a month, according to the Social Security Administration, and that couple is sitting close to $50,000 a year in income. That's right in range of what the average household actually spends in retirement, somewhere between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. Now, that's not a massive fortune, and it's not a once-in-a-generation windfall. It's the output of a disciplined, decade-long commitment to building income above the floor on purpose. Scale it up and the pattern holds. A couple with $1 million in that same kind of income-focused allocation is looking at roughly $50,000 a year from their portfolio alone before Social Security ever enters the picture. The number moves, the principle doesn't. Gary and Diane didn't arrive at their number using a generic online calculator or a rule of thumb from an article. They worked with an advisor who modeled exactly what their combined portfolio needed to produce before Gary could afford to stop working. Based on their Social Security claiming strategy, their withdrawal sequencing, their tax exposure, and their real monthly spending. Not a guess, their number. Here's the piece Suze Orman's advice leaves out, and honestly, it's the piece a lot of advisors leave out too. Investment management is not retirement planning. Managing a portfolio well and knowing precisely what that portfolio needs to produce and when to support your actual life. Those are two different jobs, and most people only ever get the first one. It's a bit like the difference between a mechanic who keeps your car running and a navigator who tells you whether you actually have enough fuel to reach the destination you picked. You need both, but most people only ever hire the first. When the restructuring hit Gary at 61, he and Diane already knew their number. They were already past it. That's the entire reason he was fine. Not because they got lucky, but because they'd already done the work of knowing. Build a plan like that, and it stops mattering whether you're forced out at 62, or you choose to leave at 58, or you decide to keep working until 70, because you genuinely love what you do. The money doesn't care when you stop. It just keeps producing, month after month, year after year. If you and your spouse don't know your number yet, what your combined accounts actually need to produce, when each of you should start Social Security, how your withdrawals should be sequenced, that's exactly what we map out on a retirement income call. No products, no pitch, no pressure. Just a clear picture of where you actually stand. The link is in the description below. Suze Orman is right about one thing above all else. Working until 65 is absolutely not guaranteed for anyone. So don't build a plan that expires the moment your employer decides it does. Build one that produces, regardless of the date. Stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.